The footsteps woke me at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. The sound came from directly above our bedroom, a slow, deliberate creak of weight shifting on old floorboards. We don't have a second floor. We have an attic that's been boarded up since before we bought the place. I lay perfectly still, breathing through my mouth to minimize noise, the way you do when some primal part of your brain takes over. Beside me, Emily's shoulder rose and fell in the steady rhythm of sleep, or what looked like sleep. The footsteps stopped. I waited a full 2 minutes before sliding out from under the covers. My bare feet hit the cold hardwood, and I moved toward the hallway in slow motion, avoiding the spots I knew would groan under my weight. 18 years in IT security teaches you to be methodical, paranoid, observant. The attic hatch was in the ceiling of our upstairs hallway, sealed with what looked like the same nails and white paint it had worn when we'd toured the house 3 years ago. I stood beneath it, neck craned, studying the edges in the dim light from the bathroom nightlight. The nails were wrong. They gleamed. No rust, no oxidation. The paint around them was fresh. I could see where it had been carefully applied to match the older coat surrounding it. Someone had removed those nails and put them back. Recently. I'm not a cop. I'm not a detective. But I've spent my career identifying system intrusions, finding the digital fingerprints that hackers leave behind when they think they've been clever. This was the same thing. Someone had accessed our attic, and they'd tried to cover their tracks. I didn't open the hatch. Not then. Instead, I went back to bed and lay there until dawn, listening to every settling timber, every whisper of wind against the windows. Emily never moved. Her breathing stayed perfectly even, perfectly controlled. Too controlled. She was awake. She'd been awake the whole time, and she was pretending otherwise. Emily left for work at 7:45 the next morning, same as always. She kissed my cheek at the door, told me she had client meetings in the city and might be late. Her pharmaceutical sales territory covered 3 states, which meant travel was constant. Conferences, dinners with hospital administrators, overnights that had become so routine I'd stopped tracking them years ago. "Love you," she said. "Love you too." I watched her car disappear around the corner, then called my office and told them I had a stomach bug. 30 minutes later, I was standing in the hallway with a crowbar I'd bought at the hardware store 6 months ago and never used. The nails came out easily, too easily. They'd been seated in the same holes multiple times. The hatch dropped open, releasing a breath of stale, warm air, and I pulled down the folding ladder that had been waiting up there this whole time. What I found made my blood turn to ice water. Someone had been living in our attic. Not in some abstract, theoretical sense. There was a mattress pushed against the far wall, covered with a tangled gray blanket. Empty water bottles formed a small pyramid in one corner. I counted 14. Food wrappers littered the floor around the mattress. Protein bars, crackers, beef jerky. Things that didn't need refrigeration. Things that didn't make noise. I moved through the space like I was walking through a crime scene, because that's exactly what it was. My hands stayed in my pockets. I touched nothing. The hole stopped me cold. Someone had drilled a small opening through the attic floor, maybe half an inch in diameter. I crouched beside it, tilted my head and looked through. Our bedroom. I was staring directly down at our bed. The bile rose in my throat, but I swallowed it back. Emotion was useless right now. I needed information. The prepaid phone was wedged between the mattress and the wall, nearly invisible against the gray fabric. A cheap flip model, the kind you buy at gas stations. The battery was dead. I photographed everything. Every wrapper, every bottle, every inch of that violated space. Then I climbed down, pushed the ladder back up, and replaced the hatch. I even used the same nails. Let whoever this was think their secret was still safe. I had work to do. The house's previous owner was a woman named Vanessa Cole. The real estate record showed she'd sold 3 years ago following a divorce from Derek Cole. A quick search pulled up Derek's driver's license photo from a public records database, a perk of having access to professional investigation tools through my work. I recognized him immediately. The dog walker. I'd seen him at least a dozen times over the past 2 years, always on our street, always with a small brown terrier on a leash. He'd nod politely when we passed. Just a neighbor getting his exercise. Except he wasn't a neighbor. The address on his license was 12 miles away. I'd seen him at our grocery store too. And the coffee shop Emily loved, the one with the expensive lattes and the exposed brick walls. I'd seen him there so many times I'd assumed he worked nearby. He wasn't watching the house. He was watching Emily. I plugged the prepaid phone into my charger and waited. Emily came home at 8:30 that night, breezing through the door with shopping bags and an apologetic smile. Traffic was a nightmare. I swear the 405 gets worse every month. No worries. I kept my voice even, my face neutral. Years of high-stakes client meetings had trained me to reveal nothing until I was ready. How were the meetings? Brutal. Dr. Harrison is being impossible about the new formulary. I had to take him and his entire staff to dinner just to get a maybe. She dropped the bags on the kitchen counter and kicked off her heels. I'm exhausted. I can see that. She didn't catch the edge in my voice. Or maybe she did and chose to ignore it. We ate leftover pasta in front of the television, watching some reality show she liked and I tolerated. She fell asleep against my shoulder around 10, and I carried her to bed like the devoted husband I'd always believed myself to be. Then I went back to the kitchen and opened the prepaid phone. The photos began in February. 9 months ago. Emily at her office walking through the parking garage. Emily at a restaurant I didn't recognize, laughing at something out of frame. Emily at a hotel, the Westin downtown, I knew that awning, looking over her shoulder as she walked through the entrance. Emily with a man. He was older than me by at least a decade, with the kind of distinguished gray temples that spoke of expensive grooming and an even more expensive self-image. They were sitting at a corner table in what looked like an upscale bar, his hand covering hers, her head tilted toward him in that way she used to tilt toward me. There were 47 photos in total, some from a distance, some close enough that they must have been taken from the next table. They covered 4 months, ending in June. I ran the man's face through a reverse image search and got a hit within seconds. Thomas Ward, Vice President of Operations at Meridian Pharmaceuticals. Emily's company. Emily's boss. I sat in the dark kitchen for a long time, the phone's screen casting pale light across my hands. The photos weren't surveillance in the traditional sense. They weren't evidence of a stalker documenting a victim. They were evidence of a hunter documenting prey. But Emily wasn't Derek's prey. She was just caught in the frame. Thomas Ward was the target. I found Vanessa Cole at a coffee shop 2 towns over on Wednesday afternoon. She'd kept a low profile since the divorce. New address, new job, new life. But people are creatures of habit, and her social media check-ins painted a clear picture of her routine. She was sitting alone at a corner table, laptop open, empty cup beside her. Late 40s, attractive in a worn-down way, like someone who'd been through something and was still finding her footing. Mrs. Cole? She looked up, startled. It's Vanessa. I dropped the Cole part. Do I know you? Grant Mitchell. I bought your old house on Magnolia Street. Her face went through 3 expressions in rapid succession. Confusion, recognition, and then something that looked a lot like fear. Oh, that's... She closed her laptop. Nice to meet you. I found some things in the attic. The color drained from her cheeks. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for her coffee cup, found it empty, and put it back down. I think we should talk, I said. Her story came out in fragments, each piece more disturbing than the last. Derek had always been controlling, jealous. The kind of husband who needed to know where she was at every moment. who checked her phone when she was in the shower, who had opinions about which friends she could keep. She'd tolerated it for years because she'd convinced herself it meant he loved her. Then she met Thomas Ward at a charity function. He was charming, successful, interested in her in ways Derek hadn't been in years. The affair lasted 2 years before Derek discovered it. He didn't yell, Vanessa said, her voice barely above a whisper. He didn't hit me. He just looked at me and told me I'd destroyed the most important thing in his life and that Thomas would pay for it. The divorce was ugly. Derek became obsessed with Ward, documenting his movements, his habits, his weaknesses. Vanessa got a restraining order eventually, but the damage was done. Her marriage was over, her affair had ended when Ward got bored and moved on, and Derek had devoted his entire existence to revenge. He said he was building a case, she told me. Evidence of Thomas's affairs, plural. He wanted to destroy him, to take away everything he had, his job, his marriage, his reputation. Ward is married? Patricia Ward. Her father founded Meridian. Thomas's entire career exists because of that marriage. I processed this information, slotting it into the framework I was building. How many affairs are we talking about? Vanessa looked at her hands. When I was involved with him, I thought I was special. That's what he made me believe. After the divorce, after I started putting the pieces together, she met my eyes. I was one of many. That's just who he is. And Emily, my wife? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. The hard drive was hidden in the attic insulation, wrapped in plastic sheeting like someone was protecting it from moisture. I found it Thursday evening after Emily left for an overnight conference in Boston. I checked the conference. There was no conference. Boston was a lie. The drive contained 3 years of surveillance footage. Derek had installed cameras throughout the house before selling it. Wireless units hidden in smoke detectors, wall clocks, even a decorative plant on our living room shelf. I'd swept for bugs when we moved in, but I'd been looking for audio devices. These were visual only, motion activated, uploading to cloud storage that Derek controlled. He'd been watching us for 3 years. He'd seen everything. I made myself watch some of it. Not the private moments, I couldn't stomach those, but the everyday footage. Emily on the phone, laughing at something. Emily getting ready for work, checking her reflection with that critical eye I'd always found endearing. Emily bringing Thomas Ward into our home on a Tuesday afternoon when I was at work, leading him upstairs by the hand. The documentation on Ward was extensive. Derek had compiled files on 7 different women spanning 5 years, each affair following the same pattern. The seduction, the promises, the gradual disillusionment when Ward inevitably grew bored. Love letters and texts and hotel receipts and restaurant charges. Everything a man would need to destroy another man's life. But Derek had never done anything with it. He'd gathered all this ammunition and then nothing. I was beginning to understand why. I found Derek at a motel on the outskirts of town. One of those places where you pay by the week and nobody asks questions. His room smelled like stale cigarettes and despair. He'd lost weight since his driver's license photo, and his eyes had the hollow look of someone who'd stopped caring about the future. I wondered when you'd show up, he said when he opened the door. Figured it would be the cops eventually. Didn't think it would be the husband. Can I come in? He stepped aside. The room was small and cluttered with papers, printouts, photographs. A conspiracy theorist's fever dream, except all of it was real. You were living in my attic, I said. 6 months, give or take. He sat on the edge of the bed, shoulders slumped. I needed a better angle on Ward. He was being careful at his usual spots, but with your wife, he got comfortable. Thought nobody was watching. You drilled a hole in my floor. I know. I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry about all of it. He looked up at me, and I saw something in his face that surprised me. Genuine remorse. Your wife was just the latest. I've documented 6 others before her. I was going to expose him, ruin his marriage, take away everything like he took from me. But you didn't. No. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. I spent 3 years building the perfect trap, and I couldn't pull the trigger. You know why? Because somewhere along the way, I realized I'd become him. Obsessive, paranoid, living in shadows, watching other people's lives because I didn't have one of my own anymore. What happened to you? After Vanessa? Derek's jaw tightened at the mention of his ex-wife's name. I lost everything. The job went first. Couldn't focus. Couldn't stop thinking about what he'd done, what she'd done. Then my apartment because you can't pay rent without a paycheck. Then my self-respect, what was left of it anyway. And you thought destroying Ward would fix all that? I thought it would feel like justice. He shook his head. Maybe it would have. Maybe I'll never know. The thing is, Mr. Mitchell, Grant. He met my eyes. The thing is, I had everything I needed to bring him down. Financial records, photographs, testimony from women he'd used and discarded. I could have ended his career, his marriage, his whole carefully constructed life. But every time I got close to actually doing it, I'd look in the mirror and see this creature I'd become. This thing that lived for revenge and nothing else. So you stopped. So I stopped. He slumped further into the bed. Moved into a motel. Stopped watching the footage. Stopped caring. Told myself it was over, that I'd moved on. A bitter smile crossed his face. Then I'd wake up at 3 in the morning and find myself parked outside your house watching the windows. Old habits. I considered this broken man, this wreck of a human being who had been driven mad by the same betrayal I was now experiencing. He was a warning, I realized. A glimpse of what I could become if I let the anger consume me, instead of channeling it into something productive. I need your files, I said. All of them. Everything you have on Ward. Why? What are you going to do with them? What you couldn't? He studied me for a long moment, searching for something in my face. I don't know what he found there, but eventually he nodded. He reached under the bed and pulled out a battered laptop bag. Everything's in here, all of it. Ward's affairs, the documentation, the footage from your house. I was going to destroy it, but he held it out to me. Maybe you'll have the courage I didn't. I took the bag. It was heavier than I expected. What happens to you now? I asked. I don't know. Maybe I'll finally get help. Maybe I'll just keep fading away in this motel room until there's nothing left. He shrugged. Does it matter? It matters. I didn't know why I said it, but I meant it. You were wronged too. Vanessa, Ward, they took something from you. What you did afterward, the obsession, the surveillance, that was wrong, and you know it. But you're still a person. You still have a chance to build something instead of tearing things down. He looked at me with something like surprise. That's very generous of you, considering I was living in your attic and watching you sleep. I'm not feeling generous. I'm feeling practical. You're a cautionary tale, Derek. A reminder of what happens when revenge becomes the only thing that matters. I don't intend to end up like you. You won't, he said quietly. You're different. I can see it. You're angry, but you're not broken. Not yet. Do what I couldn't, Derek said as I turned toward the door. Make him pay. And Grant? I'm sorry about your wife. I really am. The files revealed something I hadn't expected. Emily knew about the cameras. She'd found one of them 6 months ago, the unit hidden in our bedroom smoke detector. The footage showed her discovering it, examining it, her face cycling through confusion and fear and something else. She never told me. She never called the police. She assumed it was a remnant from the previous owner, according to a text she sent to a friend. Creepy, but whatever. Probably just some perv who's long gone. And then she kept bringing Ward to the house anyway. I watched her on the footage, positioning herself just so, tilting her head at flattering angles. She didn't just tolerate being watched. She performed for it. The last shred of sympathy I might have felt burned away. The next 2 weeks were an exercise in controlled demolition. I pretended everything was normal. I went to work, came home, kissed my wife hello and goodbye. We watched television, ate dinner together, made small talk about our days. I even initiated intimacy twice, just to maintain the illusion. But behind the scenes, I was building a case that would make Derek's efforts look amateurish. I installed my own surveillance, subtle, professional-grade equipment that I sourced through work contacts who knew better than to ask questions. I documented Emily's every lie. Working late meant hotel meetings at the Westin. Conference in Boston meant she'd never left the city. Business trips that didn't exist on any company calendar. I accessed our shared finances with the skills I'd honed over 2 decades in digital security. Emily had opened a credit card in her name only, hidden from our joint accounts. The charges told their own story. Boutique hotels, designer clothing, jewelry from stores I'd never heard of. She was spending our money I'd earned, to impress a man who was using her the same way he'd used half a dozen women before her. I didn't confront her. I didn't yell or break things or demand explanations. I created a timeline. I built an evidence folder. I constructed the architecture of my revenge with the same methodical precision I'd brought to every security system I'd ever designed. The divorce attorney's name was Richard Brennan, a partner at one of the city's most aggressive family law firms. I'd chosen him specifically because his reputation preceded him. He was known for representing betrayed spouses, and he was known for winning. His office was exactly what you'd expect. Dark wood, leather chairs, walls covered in diplomas and case citations. A shrine to legal combat. Mr. Mitchell. He stood to shake my hand, his grip firm and professional. Please, have a seat. My assistant said this was urgent. It is. I settled into the chair across from his desk and placed my evidence folder between us. I need you to tell me exactly how badly I can hurt my wife in a divorce. He didn't flinch at the bluntness. If anything, he seemed to appreciate it. Let's start with what you have. I walked him through everything, the affair, the surveillance, the documentation. He listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on a yellow legal pad, his expression giving nothing away. When I finished, he set down his pen. You've got a strong case, he said, paging through the documents I'd brought. Very strong. Adultery is still relevant in this state, especially for asset division and alimony considerations. There's a prenup. He looked up. Whose idea? Hers. She was earning more when we got married. She wanted protection. Smart woman, usually. He reached for the prenuptial agreement I'd included in the folder. May I? Please? He read through it carefully, his eyebrows climbing higher with each page. When he reached the end, he actually laughed. Mr. Mitchell, are you aware of what's in Section 7B of this document? The infidelity clause. Her idea as well. Brennan set down the prenup and looked at me with something approaching admiration. Let me read this back to you, just so we're both clear. In the event that either party engages in sexual infidelity during the marriage, said party shall forfeit all claims to assets jointly acquired during the marriage, including but not limited to real property, investment accounts, and retirement funds. The innocent party shall retain sole ownership of the marital residence and shall have no obligation to provide spousal support. Word for word. He leaned back in his chair, a slow grin spreading across his face. Mr. Mitchell, your wife handed you the knife and then walked right into it. In 15 years of practice, I've never seen someone draft the exact instrument of their own destruction. I want everything, I said. The house, the accounts, everything she's entitled to under normal circumstances. And I want it clean. No negotiations, no compromises. She signed this document because she was so confident it would never apply to her. I want her to feel the full weight of that arrogance. Brennan nodded slowly. I can do that. The evidence you have is more than sufficient. With the prenup on top of it, she won't have a legal leg to stand on. He paused. You understand that she'll fight anyway. They always fight. It's going to get ugly before it gets resolved. I'm counting on it. He studied me for a long moment. Can I ask you something? Off the record? Go ahead. Most men in your situation, they come in here angry, wounded. They're looking for justice or revenge or just some way to make the pain stop. He leaned forward. You're not any of those things. You're calm, methodical. You've thought this through like a military campaign. What is it you're really after? I considered the question. I'm after exactly what I said. Everything she stands to lose under the agreement she wrote herself. But you're right. It's not about anger. I burned through that weeks ago. This is about consequences. She made choices. She lied, she cheated. She spent our money on another man, and she did it all while looking me in the eye and telling me she loved me. People shouldn't get to do that without paying a price. Brennan nodded again, something like respect in his eyes. Then let's make sure she pays. Emily's company, Meridian Pharmaceuticals, had strict ethics policies governing workplace relationships. I obtained a copy through a carefully worded anonymous request to their HR department. The relevant section was clear. Relationships between supervisors and subordinates were prohibited without formal disclosure and approval. Failure to disclose could result in termination for cause. Emily had never disclosed her relationship with Ward. Neither had he. More importantly, Ward had been giving Emily preferential treatment for the duration of their affair. Better territories, larger bonuses, promotions that her performance reviews didn't justify. This wasn't just adultery, it was corporate misconduct. I added this to my file and kept building. Patricia Ward was not what I expected. I'd imagined a victim, a naive wife blind to her husband's serial infidelity, someone who'd be shattered by the evidence I possessed. Instead, when she responded to my anonymous email, her message radiated cold, calculating intelligence. I've known about Thomas's affairs for years, she wrote. I have my own documentation, my own timeline. I've been waiting for the right moment. We exchanged several messages over the following days, each of us careful not to reveal too much while revealing enough to establish trust. My father's health is declining, she explained. The inheritance is complex. If I divorce Thomas now, before the estate is settled, the lawyers will find ways to give him a share he doesn't deserve. I need to wait. How long? Months, not years. But I can accelerate if the circumstances require it. I considered my options. I'm planning to move against my wife in 3 weeks. The evidence I have on Thomas could be useful to you. And what would you want in return? Nothing except coordination. If we strike simultaneously, he won't have time to spin a narrative. He won't be able to protect himself or her. There was a long pause before her response came through. I think we can work together, Mr. Mitchell. You've just given me the push I needed. I told Emily about the anniversary trip on a Tuesday evening, 2 weeks before I planned to spring the trap. I want to do something special, I said, pulling up the reservation on my phone. Napa Valley, a week at that vineyard you've always talked about. Her reaction was fascinating to watch. I saw the conflict play across her face. The obligatory pleasure at a romantic gesture, layered over the inconvenience of being away from Ward, layered over what might have been genuine guilt. Or maybe I was projecting. Maybe she felt nothing at all. That's so sweet, she said, her voice catching. I've been wanting to go there for years. I know. I've been saving for it. She hugged me then, pressing her face against my chest, and I held her with arms that felt like they belonged to someone else. I love you, she said. I love you too. 3 years of marriage, thousands of shared meals, shared beds, shared plans for a future that had never existed outside my own imagination. She'd been lying the entire time, and I'd been too trusting to see it. That night, after she fell asleep, I transferred half of our liquid assets into a new account under my name alone. Everything legal, everything documented. I was protecting myself from the financial fallout, just as she'd once tried to protect herself with that prenup. The irony was almost beautiful. The week before the trip, Emily came home early on a Wednesday, her face streaked with tears. My first thought was that she knew, that somehow she'd discovered my surveillance, my plans, my conversations with Patricia. I felt my carefully constructed facade start to crack. I need to tell you something, she said. Here it was. The confession. After everything, she was finally going to admit what she'd done. Thomas is being transferred, she said, to the Singapore office. He's leaving in a month. I stared at her, struggling to process this unexpected turn. Thomas? Your boss? He was going to promote me. I've worked so hard, Grant. I've given everything to this job, and now… She collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. Everything's ruined. I sat beside her, placed my hand on her back, made the appropriate soothing sounds. Inside, I was recalibrating everything I thought I knew about my wife. She wasn't crying because the affair was ending. She wasn't crying because she'd betrayed me and lost the man she'd betrayed me for. She was crying about her career, about a promotion that had never been legitimate in the first place. In her mind, she was the victim here. She couldn't even see her own role in any of it. Maybe it's for the best, I said. Maybe this opens up new opportunities. She looked at me with wet, red-rimmed eyes. You don't understand. Nobody understands. I understood perfectly. I understood better than she ever would. The last doubt I'd been carrying, the small voice that had whispered, maybe you're overreacting, maybe there's an explanation, went silent. Emily wasn't a victim of Ward's manipulation. She wasn't a good person who'd made a terrible mistake. She was a woman who'd chosen to deceive me, day after day, month after month, and who couldn't even recognize the harm she'd caused because she was too focused on herself. She'd earned everything that was coming. The night before our anniversary trip, I barely slept. Emily had packed her suitcase with the enthusiasm of someone who believed she was about to embark on a romantic adventure. New dresses, new lingerie, new shoes. I watched her fold each item with care, chattering about wineries she wanted to visit and restaurants she'd researched. This is exactly what we need, she said. Some time away from everything. Just us. Just us, I agreed. I'd finalized everything over the preceding days. The divorce papers were signed and waiting with Brennan. The evidence packet was queued up, ready to send to Meridian's ethics board first thing Monday morning. Patricia Ward had confirmed she'd file her own divorce papers simultaneously, accompanied by a comprehensive dossier for her father's lawyers. Thomas Ward was about to experience a coordinated strike from 3 directions at once, and Emily was going to be caught in the crossfire. I felt nothing. Not triumph, not anticipation, not even the cold satisfaction I might have expected. Just a calm certainty that I was doing what needed to be done. Saturday morning dawned clear and bright. I woke early and made breakfast. Eggs, toast, fresh squeezed orange juice. Emily's favorites. She came downstairs in her robe, hair still tousled from sleep, and smiled at the spread I'd prepared. What's all this? We're celebrating, I said. Sit down. She settled into her chair, reaching for the orange juice, still wearing that easy smile. The smile of someone who had no idea what was coming. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat across from her, watching her butter her toast, watching her take a bite and chew contentedly. This was the last moment of her old life, and she had no idea. Part of me wanted to savor it. I know about Thomas. The words landed like stones in still water. I watched the ripples spread across her face. Confusion, then shock, then the dawning realization that her carefully constructed double life had just collapsed. Grant, I don't... Stop. I kept my voice level. I know everything. The hotel meetings. The trips that weren't business trips. The hidden credit card you've been using to buy things for him. I know about the cameras Derek Cole installed in this house. And I know you found one and kept right on bringing Thomas here anyway. Her mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. The piece of toast slipped from her fingers and landed butterside down on the plate. Who? She managed. Who told you? Nobody told me. I found it. All of it. Documentation spanning 14 months of you sneaking around behind my back while I sat here like an idiot, trusting you. Grant, please, let me explain. Explain what? Explain how you met him at the Westin every Tuesday for months? Explain the lingerie purchases at La Perla, the ones you never wore for me? Explain the jewelry from Tiffany that I've never seen you wear? What happened to that, Emily? Did you give it back when things got complicated? Her face crumpled. Tears started streaming down her cheeks, but they didn't move me. I'd seen those tears before, usually when she wanted something or when she'd been caught in a small lie. They were tools, not emotions. I know you've been sleeping with him for over a year. I know he's been doing the same thing with other women for at least 5 years before you. I know his wife is aware and is filing for divorce as we speak, along with a full report to her father's legal team. And I know Meridian's ethics board will receive comprehensive documentation of your affair and the preferential treatment Thomas gave you on Monday morning. Emily's face had gone white. Her hands trembled against the table. You can't do that. You'll destroy him. You'll destroy me. That's the general idea. Grant, think about what you're saying. I could lose my job, my whole career. Should have thought of that before you started sleeping with your married boss. She flinched like I'd struck her. It wasn't like that. It wasn't just... It was real. We had something real. You had a hotel room and a man who was using you exactly the way he used half a dozen women before you. The only real thing about it was the real damage you did to our marriage. Please, she whispered. Grant, please, let me explain. I slid the divorce papers across the table. Do you remember the prenup you insisted on? The infidelity clause? I tapped the relevant paragraph. If either party commits adultery, they forfeit claims to jointly acquired assets. Your words. Your protection. She stared at the papers as if they were written in a language she couldn't read. I watched her eyes move across the page, watched the color drain from her face as she recognized the document she'd drafted herself. This isn't fair. You didn't think it would ever apply to you. You were so certain I'd be the one to mess up that you built in every possible protection for yourself. Never occurred to you that you might be the faithless one. I let that sink in before continuing. I want you to remember this moment. I want you to remember how it feels to have your own words used against you. I didn't mean anything by it, she said, tears starting to fall harder now. It was a mistake. I was going to end it. When? Before or after he got transferred? Before or after he promoted you for reasons that had nothing to do with your performance? That's not true. I earned those promotions. I worked harder than anyone. You worked on your back in a hotel room while Thomas signed off on bonuses you didn't deserve. That's not earning. That's trading. She recoiled like I'd slapped her. How dare you? How dare you talk to me like what? Like a husband who just found out his wife has been lying to him for over a year? Like a man who discovered there were cameras in his house documenting every betrayal? How exactly would you like me to talk to you, Emily? She had no answer for that. The tears kept coming, but the fight was draining out of her. I was lonely, she said finally, her voice small. You were always working, always traveling. You never made time for us anymore. So your solution was to make time with someone else. That's quite a coping strategy. He made me feel wanted. He made me feel special. He made you feel exactly what he needed you to feel so you'd keep meeting him at the Westin. The same way he made the 6 women before you feel special. You weren't unique, Emily. You were just next in line. That hit her hard. I could see it land. The realization that she hadn't been the great love of Thomas Ward's life, just another conquest in a long series. You're lying. Thomas loves me. He was going to leave his wife. He was going to do nothing of the kind. His wife has known about his affairs for years. She's been building her own exit strategy, waiting for the right moment. You were never a threat to his marriage. You were just entertainment. Emily buried her face in her hands. Her shoulders shook with sobs. A year ago, even 6 months ago, this would have broken something in me. I would have gone to her, wrapped my arms around her, tried to find a way through together. That man was gone. You don't get to play the victim here, Emily. You made choices, hundreds of them. Every time you lied to me, every time you climbed into bed with him, every time you looked me in the eye and told me you loved me while you were planning your next rendezvous. Those were choices, and now you get to live with the consequences. She tried everything over the next hour. Tears, anger, bargaining. She told me Thomas had manipulated her, that she'd been vulnerable after her mother's death, that I'd been emotionally unavailable for years. She threatened to fight the divorce, to hire the best lawyers, to expose me somehow as the real villain in this story. Tell everyone what a cold, controlling husband I really was, she said, her voice rising with desperate energy. You think anyone will believe you're the innocent party here? You, with your surveillance and your files and your creepy detailed records of everything? You'll look like a stalker, a psychopath. I look like a man who did his homework, and the prenup speaks for itself. She had no response to that. The fight drained out of her as quickly as it had risen. What do you want from me? She whispered. What do you want me to say? I don't want anything from you. I want you gone. I responded to none of her final appeals. When she finally ran out of words, I picked up my coffee cup and walked toward the door. Where are you going? She asked, her voice raw. Out. When I come back, I expect you to be gone. Your parents' address seems like a good destination. It's a long drive, so you should probably get started. Grant, please. Can't we talk about this? Can't we try counseling or… There's nothing to talk about. You ended this marriage a year ago. I'm just filing the paperwork. I still love you, she said, and the absurdity of it almost made me laugh. You don't know what love means. I closed the door behind me and didn't look back. The cascade began on Monday. Patricia Ward filed for divorce at 9 a.m., accompanied by a detailed accounting of her husband's affairs submitted directly to her father's legal team. The old man had suffered a stroke 6 months earlier and was in no condition to handle the news personally, but his lawyers were more than capable of acting on his behalf. By 10 a.m., Meridian's ethics board had received my anonymous package. The documentation was comprehensive. Emails, photos, hotel receipts, evidence of preferential treatment and falsified performance reviews. I'd removed anything that could be traced back to me or to Derek's surveillance operation, leaving only the damning facts. Thomas Ward was summoned to HR before lunch. By 3 p.m., he'd been escorted from the building by security, terminated for cause with no severance and no reference. The company's legal team was already preparing to claw back bonuses he'd received under fraudulent circumstances. Emily's suspension came the following day. The investigation would take weeks, but the outcome was never in doubt. She'd been the beneficiary of Ward's misconduct, and the paper trail proved it beyond any reasonable dispute. I learned all this through careful monitoring and a few discreet inquiries to contacts I'd cultivated over the years. I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. I simply filed the information away and moved on to the next phase. The divorce proceedings lasted 2 months. Emily fought everything at first, claiming the prenup was signed under duress, that my evidence had been obtained illegally, that I'd somehow entrapped her into the affair. Her lawyers were good, but Brennan was better. Every argument she raised collapsed under the weight of documentation she couldn't refute. The prenup held. The house stayed with me, along with the majority of our liquid assets. Her hidden credit card debt, nearly $40,000, was ruled her sole responsibility. The judge's final comments included a pointed observation about the irony of an infidelity clause being invoked against the party who had demanded its inclusion. Emily didn't attend the final hearing. Her lawyer submitted her agreement to the terms, and that was that. Thomas Ward fared even worse. Patricia's divorce was expedited given her father's declining health, and the family's lawyers showed no mercy. He lost access to company assets, board positions, even the house they'd shared for 15 years. Last I heard, he was selling commercial real estate in Arizona, a shadow of the powerful executive he'd once been. The women he'd used over the years had formed an informal network in the wake of his exposure. Emily tried to join them, apparently hoping to build some kind of harassment case that might salvage her reputation. She discovered instead that she'd been the aggressor in her relationship with Thomas. His emails showed he'd tried to end the affair twice, and she'd escalated each time. There was no victimhood waiting for her, only the truth. 3 months later, I received a letter. The return address was a mental health facility in another state, a residential treatment program for people struggling with obsessive behaviors. The handwriting was cramped but legible. "Mr. Mitchell," it began, "I wanted to thank you and to tell you I'm getting help. What you did with the information I gave you, I couldn't have done it myself. I was too broken by then, too lost in my own anger. You finished what I started, and maybe that means something. I'm not the same person I was when I was living in your attic. I'm trying to become someone better. Someone who can move forward instead of looking back. I hope you can do the same. Derek Cole." I read the letter twice, then set it aside. A week after the letter arrived, I received a text from an unknown number. "It's done. The estate is settled. The divorce is final. I'm free for the first time in 20 years. Thank you for giving me the push I needed. Patricia Ward." I'd never learned her new number, but somehow she'd found mine. "I'm glad," I texted back. "What will you do now?" "Travel, read, figure out who I am without him. The usual post-divorce journey, I suppose." "Sounds like a good plan. What about you? Any plans for moving forward?" I looked around my living room, the furniture we'd picked out together, the photographs I still hadn't removed from the walls, the empty spaces where Emily's presence used to be. "Working on it," I typed. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I was packing boxes. The house had too many memories, too many ghosts lurking in corners and doorways. I'd put it on the market a month earlier and accepted an offer within the week. The new owners were a young couple, eager and optimistic, planning to start a family in the spacious rooms where my marriage had quietly died. I didn't tell them about the attic. There was nothing left to find up there. I'd removed every trace of Derek's habitation, filled the drill hole with wood putty, and painted over the evidence. Let them have their fresh start without the shadow of what had happened before. Most of my belongings were already in storage. I was keeping only the essentials: clothes, books, the equipment I needed for work. Everything else felt tainted, contaminated by association with a life that had been built on lies. My phone buzzed with a LinkedIn notification. "Vanessa Harris has viewed your profile." Harris, not Cole. She'd remarried, apparently, or simply chosen a new name to go with her new life. I pulled up her profile and studied the photo. She looked better than she had at that coffee shop, more settled, more at peace. A message appeared a moment later. "I heard about everything that happened. I've been wanting to reach out, but I wasn't sure if you'd want to hear from me. If you ever want to grab coffee and talk, I'm around. No pressure either way." I stared at the message for a long time. Vanessa had been through her own version of this nightmare. She understood the particular devastation of having your trust weaponized against you, of discovering that the person you'd built your life around was someone else entirely. She'd emerged on the other side, scarred but still standing. Maybe there was something to be learned from that. I typed a reply. Coffee sounds good. This weekend works if you're free. Her response came quickly. Saturday at 2? Same place you found me before? I'll be there. I set my phone aside and returned to packing, but something had shifted. The weight I'd been carrying for months felt fractionally lighter. Saturday was overcast, the kind of gray autumn day that makes coffee shops feel like refuges. I arrived early and claimed a corner table, watching the door. Vanessa walked in at exactly 2, wrapped in a pea coat, her hair shorter than I remembered. She spotted me immediately and made her way over. Grant, you look... She paused, searching for the right word. Different. In a good way. I feel different. I gestured to the chair across from me. Thanks for reaching out. Thanks for responding. She sat, ordered a latte when the server appeared, and settled back to study me. I wasn't sure you would. After everything, I thought you might want to leave all of it behind, including anyone associated with it. I considered that, I admitted. For a while, I wanted nothing more than to pretend none of it happened. Move somewhere new, start over, never think about any of it again. What changed? I thought about the question. I realized I couldn't outrun it. The experience is part of me now, whether I like it or not. The only question is whether I let it define me or I define it. She nodded slowly. That took me 3 years to figure out. You're ahead of schedule. Her latte arrived, and she wrapped her hands around it like she was seeking warmth. Can I ask you something? Go ahead. When you first found out, when you saw those photos on Derek's phone, what did you feel? The very first moment? I thought back to that night in the dark kitchen, the phone's glow illuminating images that dismantled everything I'd believed about my life. Nothing, I said. At first, I felt absolutely nothing, like my brain just shut down, refused to process it. And then everything. Anger, betrayal, grief, humiliation, all of it hitting at once like a wave I couldn't see coming. Vanessa nodded. That's exactly how it was for me. The numbness, and then the flood. She took a sip of her latte. The hardest part, for me, wasn't the anger. That was easy, almost energizing. The hardest part was the grief. Mourning the relationship I thought I had, the person I thought Derek was. The future I'd imagined that was never going to happen. Did it get better? Eventually, not quickly, and not in a straight line. There were setbacks. Days when I was sure I'd never feel normal again. She met my eyes. But here's what I've learned. The grief passes. The anger fades. What's left is just you. A different version of you than before, but still you. We talked for another 2 hours about the aftermath, the recovery, the small victories, and unexpected setbacks. She told me about her new job, her new apartment, the therapy that had helped her understand why she'd stayed with Derek for so long. I told her about selling the house, about the relief I felt watching Emily's things disappear from closets and shelves. When the coffee shop began to close, we walked out together into the cool evening air. This was good, I said. I needed this. Me too. She smiled. A real smile, without the shadow of old pain behind it. Same time next week? I'd like that. She squeezed my arm briefly, then turned and walked toward her car. I watched her go, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Not happiness exactly. Not yet. But the possibility of it, somewhere ahead. A year after the divorce, I received one final communication from Emily. It came through a mutual friend. She'd been blocked on every platform and had apparently exhausted all other avenues. The message was simple. She wanted to talk, to apologize, to explain if I'd let her. I told the friend to pass along my response. There's nothing left to say. And there wasn't. Whatever Emily had become, whatever circumstances or weaknesses had led her to betray everything we'd built together, none of it mattered anymore. The woman I'd married had never really existed. She'd been a character Emily played while pursuing her own hidden agenda. Mourning that fiction served no purpose. I'd moved into a new apartment by then, a clean space with no history and no ghosts. The attic was empty, the cameras were gone, and the only eyes watching my life were my own. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear sounds from above. Creaks and groans, the settling of old buildings or the wind finding gaps in the structure. Each time my heart rate spikes for just a moment before reason takes over. It's nothing. It's always nothing. But I check anyway. I'll probably always check. Some things, once learned, can't be unlearned. Some violations leave marks that don't fade, no matter how much time passes or how much healing happens. I'm not the same person I was before I found Derek Cole's mattress in my attic. That version of me, trusting, complacent, blind to the deceptions happening under his own roof, died somewhere in the process of discovering the truth and exacting a price for it. The person who emerged from that wreckage is harder, more careful, slower to trust. But he's also free. Free of the lies, free of the pretense, free of a marriage that had been hollow long before he'd known it. Free to build something real with someone who might actually deserve it. Vanessa and I had our 5th coffee date last weekend. We're taking things slow. Neither of us is in any rush to repeat past mistakes. But there's something there. A connection built on shared understanding, on the recognition of what it takes to survive betrayal and come out the other side. She asked me recently if I had any regrets, about how I'd handled everything, about the methodical destruction I'd orchestrated rather than simply walking away. I thought about it for a long time before answering. No, I said finally. They earned what they got, all of them. The only thing I regret is not seeing it sooner. She nodded like she understood. She probably did. I sold the last piece of evidence last month, Derek's hard drive, wiped clean and recycled. Everything else had long since been destroyed. The photographs, the documents, the surveillance footage that had powered my revenge. There's no trace left of what happened. No physical reminder of the attic or the cameras or the lies. Just the memories. And those are fading too, slowly replaced by new experiences and new possibilities. Emily is still in her parents' town, last I heard. Working some kind of administrative job, rebuilding from the ground up. I don't wish her well, but I don't wish her ill either. She's simply irrelevant. A closed chapter in a book I've stopped reading. Thomas Ward disappeared from public view entirely. The pharmaceutical industry has a long memory, and his name has become synonymous with career-ending scandal. Wherever he is, whatever he's doing it far from the world he once dominated. Patricia Ward sends me a holiday card every year. Just a simple message, a reminder that our paths crossed for a reason. She's living in Europe now, enjoying the freedom she'd waited so long to claim. Derek Cole writes occasionally. His recovery has been slow but steady, and he's found meaning in helping others escape the obsessive patterns that nearly destroyed him. He never mentions the attic. Neither do I. It's Saturday afternoon, and I'm waiting at the coffee shop for Vanessa. She's late, stuck in traffic, according to her text. So I've claimed our usual corner table and ordered my usual drink. The place is busy with weekend crowds, families and couples and solitary laptop users, all of them absorbed in their own stories. I watch them and wonder what secrets they're keeping, what lies they're telling, what betrayals they're planning or suffering or recovering from. Everyone has something hidden. Everyone has an attic. My phone buzzes. Vanessa. 5 minutes away. Miss me? I smile at the screen. An easy, unforced expression that still surprises me sometimes. Always, I type back. The bell above the door chimes as someone enters, and I look up instinctively. It's just a stranger, nobody I know. But for a moment, just a moment, my heart races anyway. Old habits. The door opens again, and this time it's Vanessa, unwrapping her scarf as she scans the room. Her face lights up when she spots me, and she makes her way over, dropping into the chair across from mine with a theatrical sigh. Traffic was impossible. I swear this city gets worse every week. It's fine. I wasn't going anywhere. She reaches across the table and squeezes my hand, a brief, casual gesture that carries more meaning than either of us would admit out loud. So, she says, settling back. Tell me about your week, I tell her. The small victories and minor frustrations, the work projects and weekend plans, the ordinary details of an ordinary life. She listens, responds, shares her own stories in turn. It's nothing special. Just two people who found each other in the wreckage, building something new from the ground up.